Random stuff, right? Hello, everybody. Hello. Hey, welcome to my fully lit studio at the moment. Normally, it's a very dark bunker, but I actually kept all the normal lighting on for the talk today. And today we're going to talk about triggering. Why? Well, you know, us synth heads tend to look for more gear to make their music sound better. And I like to use the kitchen analogy. There's the kitchen, there's the ingredients, and there's the cook. And you are the cook. And the skills of the cook are more important than the costs of the kitchen. But where we are talking about today is about triggering. And triggering, in this analogy, are the ingredients. Great food needs great ingredients. You have your kitchen, you have your gear, and you have your skills and your knowledge. And yeah, how to bring your skills and your knowledge to your kitchen is with the ingredients, and those ingredients I call triggering. And the most common way of triggering is, of course, playing a keypad. 2 keypads, to be precise. And I don't want to get super theoretical with chord names and scales and stuff like that, because us electronic musicians, we don't like that stuff. And by the way, there are like hundreds of chords, and there are millions of scales and everything. And I'm gonna try to make it as easy as I can, and just use the principle of counting and like taking a walk. And what do I mean by that? Well, a skill is nothing more than a walk from one note to the same note in another octave, basically. So when you start at the A, the first note, it's just a little walk, the simplest walk, just taking the white keys, and you do, hey, we have an A minor scale. But I'm going to stop using the name, so this was the only name I'm using right now. So, especially with A as a root note or a bass, this is a very useful, simple scale, but you can use the same notes with a different bass note and make it a totally different scale. Just move it up one beat, one step. And my advice is to, when you start making music, start with picking a scale. And don't pick a scale by jumping into books and reading and going through all the names and stuff. But just sit behind your keyboard, take a walk from one key to the other, and decide which path you like most. So in this case, we're going to keep it simple. Going to keep using white keys. Perfectly good scale. And of course, there are other paths to take, especially like you can like or for Halloween events or something, it could be something like that. You don't know. Whatever you're looking for and fits your mood of that moment, especially when you're creating live music on the spot or you want to create some music at that point. So that covers the super basic explanation of scales. Just pick a starting note, take a walk, pick the walk you like most, and stick on it. So now you've decided on the scale. I'm gonna do the easiest one for the purposes of keeping this easy. And now you want some chords in this scale. You're going to keep the bass note at A. And what you can basically do is just hit a couple of notes that are part of the scale you just created or chosen. So, an obvious one is taking the first and the fifth step. Always works and doesn't very much decide the mood. Most other notes do. So when you add the third one, or you can add the second one, all proper chords. You can just hit a couple of keys. You don't even have to hit the root note, especially when you have a bass line going. I can now just hit random 4 keys and it will be a chord. Even sounds interesting because it's unconventional, maybe. And a simple rule is the further the notes are a part of your chord, the more open it sounds and the more jazzy it gets. I'm just hitting random notes. So let me sustain this bass line, this bass note. So when you have a bass line going, let me do a bit. And let's just sequence some chords in here. Why not? And I'm doing random stuff, right? No knowledge at all, just hitting random notes. This could be a song, or especially when you maybe move the bass line from your root note to another note that's in the same scale. Can also make it interesting. Again, I'm just doing random stuff. I know, of course, which ones will be easiest to use. Like usually the first, the third, the fourth, the fifth, and the octave. They also usually all work for creating bass progressions. Without getting super theoretical, because most things I say, some purists will say, well, you're doing it all wrong because it's like this, and shut up. Because it's not important. It's about having fun and creating something that wasn't there before. So that's just a super basic way of looking into picking your chords and triggering and putting your ingredients to your kitchen. Because I think the best way to make your synthesizer sound better is just picking the right notes. You can spend a lot of money on a $5,000 polysynth, but if you're hitting ugly notes, it will sound like shit. And it doesn't cost any money to get yourself to know a little bit what you're doing. So let me do some more chords. Some chords are, there's some nice tricks, and some chords are very effective. And I want to focus on chords that work well for electronic music. I think there are some chords that don't necessarily work well for electronic music, but are used heavily in other styles like jazz and blues or something. Like this major 7th chord. I don't like this in electronic music somehow. It somehow doesn't fit with synthesizers. That's what I think. So I'm going to focus on the things I think sound well, like the simple minor, adding the second note, or adding the second note an octave higher, making it adding the 9th note basically. Works very well, I think. Or adding a 6th. And one of my current favorites is a chord that doesn't really even have a proper name. And there is an it's just four steps and another 4 steps. It's a 1-4-7 chord, you could call it. Some call it chordal, some call it a minor 7 sustained 4, but without a 5th, whatever. All that stuff confuses most creative people that didn't go to music school. So just pick the first note, the 4th, and the 7th. Sounds nice. Another very fun one, I'm gonna use the hold function for this, is just skipping a note every time. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 13. You can see by the lights. So it's basically adding this and whoop, whoop. I love it. And it's very simple. But what if you don't have a polysynth? You cannot do chords. No! Yes, you can do something that resembles chords, and that's you probably have an arpeggiator or a sequencer capable of arpeggiating. So let us do that. Let's go to a monosynth, and let's do the same chord we just did. Sounds pretty all right. And the same thing here. Changing, just having a monosynth, doing a arpeggiator with a nice chord like this, and changing the bass notes from your root note to any of the other notes that are in this chord. Arpeggio stays the same. Very fun and easy trick to, on the fly, create something. And yeah, of course you can do that with all kinds of chords. You see now I'm using the 1, 2, 3 and the 5. Maybe you start the bass pattern on the 5 and go back to 1. So easy if you look at it like this. And the same thing applies to all root notes and chords, of course. It's just the distance between the steps you make from one place to the other. Okay. So yeah, we did some chords, and just don't feel you need to do a chord that exists. It doesn't matter if it exists or not. Just combine some notes. There's some tricks to it, like if you pick some notes from a scale, take some distance. Usually works better than cramming them all together. So especially when you have a large keyboard available, it just opens it all up a bit. So, chord progressions. Yeah, I shortly talked about that. Like, if you have the scale, can basically use chords that are all in the same scale, just hitting some notes. There are some things that work well and some chords that are a good last chord to go back to the beginning, but I'm not going to go into that theory. There's some nice videos and tools for that available for creating traditional chord progressions. And usually in the synth music we make like ambient and down tempo and stuff. There's not a lot of chord progression happening, so I'm not focusing on that. So another fun thing, another fun trick is I have the DeepMind 12 connected here. That's the one I'm using for all the scales and chords at the moment. There it is. Okay, and the DeepMind has a chord function. So it allows you to record a chord, and then you can. Now it's armed. I'm gonna do a simple chord. Well, I didn't do a simple chord. I did the super wide chord with jumping one step every time. And so now when I press just this A right here, very powerful tool. It instantly get this classic house sound. That's because in the early house days, they used to have just a sample in the sampler, which basically was an orchestral hit or a sampled chord, and they used those to create melodies, and that created that sound. So that's a fun trick, but it gets even more fun when you use an arpeggiator to trigger that chord. So now So what if I do some changes here? Like that can be interesting. So that's another fun trick, using an arpeggiator combined with a chord mode, and in that way arpeggiate chords. Some synths have chord modes. Usually only polysynths or paraphonic synthesizers. Another fun thing is arpeggiating arpeggiators. So the DeepMind 12 also has an arpeggiator. Or let's first do sequencing an arpeggiator. Let's see, what do we have here? So we're now listening to the arpeggiator of the DeepMind 12, and I'm sending it a simple A minor chord. So what we can, for instance, do is use the sequencer of the KeyStep Pro, and let me have a little kick going for measure. Well, that's not a little kick, but hey. And I'm gonna do a record and play some chords. So what I did now, I just played some simple chords into the sequencer on a 64-step pattern, and the DeepMind is arpeggiating it. very simple way to create a chord progression, or in this case, an arpeggiation progression, maybe. Also gives you the opportunity to combine it with chord mode, change some things. Okay, so that's sequencing an arpeggiator. You can also arpeggiate an arpeggiator. What? Yes, that's possible. So let's put both the devices on Arpeggiator. Really interesting, surprising results so now the notes of one arpeggiator is triggering the other arpeggiator, and it can get really nice and abstract in a way. So without putting too much thought in it, I've created something that doesn't sound cheesy or rudimental or something, but just by combining some techniques that have the abilities to surprise you. And I really like to do stuff like that on the spot. Sometimes it's unpleasantly surprising, but most of the time it's surprising. You just have to enable yourself to do it. Sometimes you don't feel like doing it because you're a bit insecure or whatever, and then it helps to try some of that stuff out when you're not streaming, and put it into use when you are. I still have a couple of minutes left. I have this little list here. So what did we do? We did live playing keyboards. Recording sequences, programming sequences, of course, a very standard way of generating your sound arps. We did, and of course, looping is a thing. If you have one mono synth, one simple sequencer, and a looper, you can make amazing music. I know my setup doesn't look like it. I'm probably not the right person to promote less is more, but technically it's a very good way of creating very rich music with simple stuff, because you can just keep on layering, change the patch of the same synth, and that way stack your music together. And you can expand with using pedals connected to your looper, and change the synth that is currently running but not recorded. So that way you can, especially combining the techniques that I talked about, like live playing, sequencing, arpeggiating, chord mode, arpeggiating chord mode. in any layer you are using a different technique, you get a lot richer sound because you're using a lot of different ingredients and a lot of preparation techniques. I'm gonna finish off with the voice part. So there are some. Everybody has a voice. Not everybody can sing, but you can talk, and everybody can shout something through a vocoder. So let's do a little voice segment. What a vocoder basically does, it takes I think it's the envelope or the gate of your voice, and it applies it to a running synthesizer. So let me put, maybe even the same chord we've been using. And I'm gonna put it in the vocoder. My vocoder is a, let's see if it's the device over here. I can totally recommend it. It's not very expensive. It's the Electro Harmonics V256 vocoder. And it's polyphonic. It has a built-in simple polysynth. You can put a microphone in one place, and you can use it as a send-receive effect as well. It's pretty good. Anyhow, let me trigger that chord into the sequencer. And this is the sequence channel that controls the vocoder. So right now you're not hearing anything because I'm using the mic in a different way.
And now we're gonna switch to vocoder. The vocoder is running the chord, and I'm now talking through the vocoder. And that's basically what it does.
So you can sequence a vocoder. I do that lots of times. I now had a 16-step pattern, but what if we do like a 32-step pattern? And let me get the kick in. So I now enter 3 chords into the vocoder sequencer. And let's get back to the sequence.
Hello everybody, this is a chord progression in a vocoder. And I'm talking, but
so that's a vocoder. You can also send like a drum beat through a vocoder and have it use the envelope of the drum sounds to trigger the built-in synthesizer. Bubble is talking about a kazoo, but I've been doing some playing what's it called, melodica through a vocoder. Can be interesting. Didn't sound like much, but there's some experience to it. For instance, or like analog percussion or something. Yep, there it is. Just an example of the versatility of this triggering technique, the vocoder. It's a lot more than a simple voice effect. It's a principle. Since we're in the voice segment, we're gonna do a little bit of the Talkbox. So what is a Talkbox? It's the device over here, and it basically is a speaker and a tube. That's it. It's a speaker that instead of a conus, it has this hose, and it sends the music through the hose. That's it. It's no fancy effect or anything. It's just a speaker. Usually with some tone controls or whatever, but it's a speaker. Nothing more than that. And I now have it connected to this Chord monologue. And the idea is you use the shape of your mouth as a filter, if you will, as a way to bend the sound that comes out of the synthesizer. So if you combine all those things, you put the holes in your mouth without trying not to gag. And if you're a bit good at it, you can even make synthesized words like that. And yeah, made very popular in with some disco musicians and stuff. So yeah, that's also a thing. And of course, you can combine this with other things as well. So you can have a sequence running, for instance, and put the holes in your mouth while the sequence is running, and blah, blah, blah. Combinations like that could also be very interesting. Okay, I'm going to close with a short piece about generative sequencing. For that, I'm using the Torso T1. Let me start the clock. So that is this sequencer generating notes based on an algorithm, and you can use all these dials. The lights don't really show well on the camera, but I got an 8-step pattern, and by using this knob, for instance, I control how many triggers happen in those 8 steps, or you can change the number of steps of a pattern, or other interesting stuff like randomizing stuff, randomizing velocity, randomizing accents, randomizing voicing. But it goes a lot further than that. But there's also a very interesting function, and they call it the FX function, but it's a lot more than that. So I still have the same generative sequence running, but now it's connected to the MIDI input. So when I play a chord, I don't know why it's that soft. Maybe it's the velocity thing. Weird. Anyhow, I can play notes on the keyboard, and whatever note I play is going to be the input note of the generative sequencer. So you now have a combination of live playing and generative sequencing. And I usually do another layer to that, and I record the stuff I play live on this keyboard, and it gets sent through a generative sequencer, and in its turn this generative sequencer also gets sent to the black box MIDI, and in the black box I can record the sequences I've played, so the MIDI stuff. So it's 3 layers, but you can get really, really complicated and interesting stuff like that. But that's a totally different talk. And I'd like to close with this. So thanks, everybody. I hope you learned something. If not, I hope it was enjoyable at least. Thank you for your attention, and have a good night.